7 years after the release of the original Dark Souls, the merciless action RPG in the form of a polished remaster made its way to the Switch and marked the first time a Souls game appeared on a Nintendo console. The game opens by introducing you to the hostile world of Lordaeron, and while it's huge and a lot of the scenery is more beautiful than frightening, the entire map gives off a vibe of having been long past its prime. Its lonely and suffocatingly dark atmosphere will help draw you into the action and keep you on your toes as you explore the depths of each area. Now everything in the game revolves around souls, which are dropped upon killing enemies or found when looted from the corpse strewn about the land. These souls are used to gain levels, purchase items and equipment from merchants, or to upgrade weapons and armor. However, there is a slight catch. Every time you die, all the souls you were carrying are left where you fell. If you can return to where you died, you can reclaim these lost souls, but if you die before reaching it or fail to return for any reason, those souls are lost, and believe me, you'll be dying a lot as this is a game that's not afraid to fight back. Enemies and traps are positioned to catch you by surprise, and as a result, there is constant tension whilst exploring, knowing that whatever is lurking behind each corner could easily cut huge chunks from your health bar. It creates the perfect mix of risk versus reward that will keep you coming back time and time again. I can easily recommend this game to patient players who enjoy being let go to explore at their own pace and get a thrill out of a challenging journey. However, those who are easily frustrated may not have as much fun. Dusk is a first-person shooter that wears its inspiration on its sleeves, mainly Quake, which took the industry by storm when it first released by offering both fast gameplay and incredible visuals for its time. The game is set up into a series of levels that naturally escalate in complexity the further you progress, but the best part about each of them is that there's a huge emphasis upon verticality that adds an incredible amount of options when it comes to making your way round. Leaping across an entire map in a single jump just to land a shotgun blast onto an unsuspecting enemy just never gets old. Speaking of weapons, this is another area where the game excels and allows the player to get creative with the several types on offer. You've got your standard pistols, machine guns and shotties, but several inclusions like the crossbow and rocket launcher open up many different strategies. The other side of this coin are the enemies themselves, and just like any other FPS, enemy variety plays a huge role and naturally plays into one of the several options you have as a player. Now admittedly, the game's presentation won't be for everyone, but if you grew up on the likes of Quake and Unreal Tournament, prepare for a wave of nostalgia to wash over you. Dusk certainly isn't breaking any new ground on a technical level, but it absolutely matches and even succeeds its intended look and feel derived from its inspirations. The moody lighting and tasteful textures make the trip through a nightmare-fueled America absolutely unforgettable. If you've exhausted any of the more popular first-person shooters on the Nintendo Switch, then Dusk will offer up something that's not only easy to get to grips with, but also a game that is bound to stick with you long after the credits have rolled. There's no lack of quality turn-based RPGs on the Switch, but when it comes to those created with a mature theme in mind, Shin Megami Tensei 5 takes the prize. Much like the previous entries in the SMT series, the 5th iteration once again sees you taking on the role of a high school student who suddenly finds himself pulled into a different dimension. As he travels the mysterious world, it's not long until he runs into demons, which prompt a godlike being of the land to fuse with the young man and create a type of deity capable of taking on the demons. And this is where the real meat of the game begins. As you would expect, you level up over the course of the adventure and learn new and devastating moves that help quell the onslaught of enemies thrown your way, but that's not the only way in which the player can fight back. As like many other entries in the series, it's possible to engage with several of the demons that occupy the world and potentially recruit them to your cause. By doing this, you gain access to an unprecedented amount of ways to tackle each threat, mainly through a well thought out and implemented weakness system that's built on several elements and types of attacks, which make each encounter a thoroughly strategic affair. This is no more apparent than when it comes to the various boss fights, where more often than not the game will try to change and challenge your elemental strategy. So having a varied party with different demons that go from healers to tanks and DPS, while having different elemental resistances and offenses is the way to go. Now visually, there is no denying that SMT 5 is clearly one of the best looking games on the Switch, and it's not only a matter of visual prowess and its utilization of Unreal Engine 4, its greatest aspect in terms of presentation is also its art direction. With its compelling narrative and gameplay, SMT 5 is the perfect choice if you're looking for a mature RPG to jump into on the Switch. Now I know including Resident Evil 4 might be considered cheating, but there is no denying the legacy of this game that continues to stay relevant right up to this day. Now Resident Evil 4 gained its legendary status by implementing many new mechanics that would go on to influence the industry at large. The first being the switch to the over-the-shoulder view that brought the action into a whole new dimension, by presenting the action up close and personal as opposed to the fixed camera angles of old. A change that still to this day divides the fanbase, but objectively it's easy to see how this new approach would help bring new players on board with its now full-on action approach, and this is no more apparent than when it comes to the many ways you can fight back against the hordes of zombies. Unlike past entries where you were limited to a small selection of weapons throughout the game, the fourth entry saw the player having the ability to utilize an economy system that granted them the use of several items and weapons. You had the opportunity to purchase and upgrade many of these weapons by visiting a merchant that would pop up throughout the adventure, and by collecting several treasures scattered throughout the area and combining them, it was possible to net serious amounts of money to spend during each visit. This is the genius of Resident Evil 4, that near never-ending loop of striving to find the best items to cash in your reward, and in my opinion one of the main reasons why it's just as playable today as it was back then. But if there was one word that could help sum up Resident Evil 4 on the whole, it would have to be variety. Throughout the journey, you'll visit a huge range of locations that bring along with them new threats and challenges to overcome. From the starting area of the village to the madness of the island towards the end, it's a game that will keep you on the edge of your seat, with up to 40 hours of playtime in a single run, and a near endless amount of reasons to come back for more. Resident Evil 4 stands out as one of the best in the series. Catherine Full Body sees the player filling the shoes of Vincent, a rather simple man with no ambition, who's been in a relationship with the same girl for 5 years. Marriage is constantly brought up, but Vincent has no desire to change anything about his life, which is largely consumed by drinking with his friends at the local bar. After one of these drunken nights, he mysteriously wakes up with another girl in the morning, and life just becomes that much more complicated. The story revolves around this event as you control Vincent and deal with what he's done. How you deal with this event and react to it is up to you, but the story as a whole follows a pre-scripted path, so you can't really handle things like you may want to, but at least there are several branching paths in the story that provide a good incentive to play through it again. But there's more than just Vincent's cheating going on though, as Vincent starts having nightmares where he's trapped on a seemingly endless tower of blocks with a group of talking sheep. They give him one piece of advice: climb or die, and if Vincent falls, he'll never wake up again. The stages are a convoluted mess of movable blocks and obstacles. You've got to create your own paths and stairs by pushing or pulling each box into position. Since their formations depend on how their edges connect, you've got to plan carefully. One wrong move could result with you being stuck at a dead end, grimly waiting for the stage to dissolve beneath you. The steady introduction of obstacles keeps things interesting too. You'll have to narrowly dodge spiky traps, slide across rows of ice blocks, and demolish whole chunks of the level with some well-placed bombs. That's aside from all of the murderous sheep who constantly try to shove you into oblivion. In the end, you're either going to like Catherine or you aren't, the choice of which should hinge on your enjoyment of the type of puzzle game Catherine is. Overall, it's not perfect by any means, but its gameplay is gripping, and the story is easy to get into if you're willing to suspend your disbelief and enjoy its simultaneously light-hearted but mature nature. Starting out life on the Nintendo Wii, No More Heroes is the brainchild of legendary designer Suda51, and is a game that mixes several genres together to create one hell of an experience. It all takes place 9 years after the events of the second game, and once again thrusts you into the role of the ever-witty Travis Touchdown. No More Heroes 3 retains the simple yet satisfying combat the series is known for, but this time adds to it in several meaningful ways. You have two types of attack. You've got light and heavy, which can be used to connect pretty basic combos, and once you completed a full combo, the screen will prompt you to use the motion controls to simulate a final slash. For those not fond of motion controls, this can be changed in the options, but believe me, landing one of these hits feels all the more satisfying with a full arm swing. Naturally, as you progress, the enemy's abilities increase, prompting the player to have a full understanding of their arsenal, but more importantly, a chance to take advantage of the progression system in place. Throughout the game, you'll unlock several skills, and also create and equip items with different attributes like more defense or attack. That opens many ways to grow Travis into a much more formidable fighter. These skills make up for the lack of weapons, which was a huge part of the second game. They do achieve what they set out to do by mixing up the combat, but it would have been nice nice to have seen a bit more variety in weapon choice on the whole. Now, one of the most striking aspects of the game are its visuals, that employ a sort of cel-shaded style to portray the action. From the very beginning, when the game starts with a 2D beat-em-up, and right after that a beautiful and stylish animation kicks off the main event. This is a game with style, and it's not afraid to flaunt it. From character design to locations and special effects, it's simply incredible to see it in action. Admittedly, the frame rate does suffer, as well as some screen tearing rearing its ugly head, but it's not anything that can't be overlooked thanks to the stellar gameplay. For longtime fans and newcomers alike, No More Heroes 3 offers up one of the best adventures on the Switch that should not be missed. First off, the fact that Doom Eternal on the Switch is even a thing is nothing short of a miracle. The absolute technical wizardry of idSoft strikes again and delivers the full experience, albeit with a few caveats to Nintendo's hybrid. Eternal offers a simple but well-crafted story, allowing the player to travel through a real crusade against hell. It creates a much more coherent and engaging adventure than the original reimagining in 2016. On the gameplay front, it's a far better experience as well, especially when played docked and using a Pro Controller as opposed to handheld with the Joy-Cons. The run and gun approach remains at the core of Doom Eternal and sees you practically dancing across each level as you strike your shots and try to avoid enemy fire, performing some of the most grotesque finishes one after the other and changing your weapon on the fly based on the situation at hand. Weapons is an area where Doom Eternal absolutely steals the show. There's a huge amount to choose from, including standard blasters to shotguns and even light swords that help mix up the action and keep each run feeling as fresh as your first time through. As I mentioned earlier though, the clear standout is without a doubt the visuals, which really showcase what the Switch is capable of in the hands of experienced developers. As you might expect, the game runs at 30 FPS as opposed to 60 on the other consoles, and there are some slight dips once the action heats up, but it's nothing that decreases the enjoyment of the gameplay. This is largely achieved to what seems like the same visual quality you would likely see at the lowest setting on the PC, and with it being shrunken down to the handheld screen, it's hardly noticeable, and still manages to portray a visceral experience for players to enjoy. Even though there are many better ways to play it, if you've only got access to a Switch, Doom Eternal is a respectable FPS that will not disappoint. Bayonetta 3 begins with beings from another world known as Homunculi, touring all of the universes and destroying them. Now it's the turn of our Bayonetta, who already saw all of this coming, to prepare for the most intense battle of her life. This third part goes a step further, seeing different Bayonettas from different universes, showing us all of the possible sides of the Witch of Umbra. Now the thought of a multiverse may have the potential to piss a few players off, due to nearly every fucking franchise these days are playing the same trope. But here with Bayonetta 3, it's used in a meaningful way that actually accelerates the story to new heights, and as a result offers up one of the better narratives out of the three games. Of course, the action-packed gameplay has always been the bread and butter of the series, and the third outing turns everything up to 11. After two very similar installments, Platinum decided to revolutionize Bayonetta with several changes that discard some options from previous games. The use of weapons on her feet and arms has been dropped, instead moving to a system that combines different types of demonic summons with different weapons, and being able to switch between all of them on the fly during combat. Therefore, the types of attacks you can perform in battle will be different, and the final blows will change depending on the demon you have equipped. The range of possible combinations is much more fun and engaging than in previous games. Now, one aspect of the experience that deserves special praise is how it pushes the Switch to its limits. Platinum Games focused on making Bayonetta 3 run at 60 FPS, and for the most part it succeeds, but there are moments when the action drops to the low 40s. But taking into account the amount of mayhem that can play out during battle, this is still one hell of an achievement, and only bolsters the overall quality of the presentation. Overall, the several changes that were made to the usual formula make for a much more enjoyable adventure, and when it comes to mature games on the Switch, Bayonetta 3 is the literal definition of a must-have. The Switch is by far one of the best consoles for fighting games. From the Neo Geo classics to the Capcom heavy hitters, there is plenty on offer. But when it comes to mature rated fighters, however, Mortal Kombat 11 is without a doubt the go-to choice. Much like the entries before it, Mortal Kombat 11 carries on the tradition of mixing intense fighting with some of the most grotesque gore you can imagine by pitting up to nearly 40 characters against each other. As you would expect, each of them share a string of basic moves such as uppercuts and leg sweeps, but also a selection collection of unique attacks that range from fireballs to flying hats. The sheer diversity of these fighters is what truly helps Mortal Kombat 11 excel. No matter what your playstyle, may it be defensive or offensive, there is bound to be one that suits your approach. Complementing the simple attacks and special moves is the potential to pull off combos, and this is where the gameplay truly begins to shine. For those that get used to the intricacies of each character, you'll soon find yourself pulling off devastating combos that can deplete the enemy's health in a flash. Anyone familiar with the series will know why Mortal Kombat 11 has earned a spot on this list, and that is mainly because of the fatalities. These special finishing moves offer up some of the most disturbing but admittedly quite humorous ways to humiliate each of your opponents. Seeing each and every character's versions of these moves is half the fun, and will no doubt turn a few stomachs along the way. Now visually, Mortal Kombat 11 on the Switch is nothing short of stunning, with it managing to maintain a solid 60 frames per second throughout each and every fight. But it's not only about performance, as art direction plays a huge role in a game's graphical makeup, and Mortal Kombat 11 absolutely steals the show, resulting in one of the most visually stunning games available on the Switch. If you still haven't got around to playing it, Mortal Kombat 11 will no doubt leave a smile on your face, and with it now available on all of the latest platforms, there's never been a better time than now. The main focus of Maiden of Blackwater is the fictional Japanese mountain Mount Hikami. It's a spiritual place, infamous for strange happenings, and was the religious locale of a unique group of worshippers, sacrificing maidens to keep an evil power known as the Blackwater at bay. You follow 3 different characters who are subtly connected to each other, with all of their stories intertwining to unravel the mystery of the mountain. The game plays out in a sort of episodic fashion, with each chapter following the 3 protagonists who have access to an important tool known as the Camera Obscura. On your way through the episodes, you will encounter ghosts. Some of them are peaceful observers, some of them relive their violent deaths, and quite a lot of them will attack and try to kill you. Your camera is your only weapon, as taking pictures of your attacker will deal damage to them. Deal enough damage and the ghosts will be exorcised and finally leave this world. At the start of the game, you only have one lens for this camera, but as you progress further up the dark and mysterious mountain, you'll come across different lenses that offer up unique advantages such as faster film reloading and greater damage. This part of the game truly shines, mainly due to the gyro controls that effectively turn your Switch into a camera. It is very satisfying to focus on the ghosts and to eliminate them this way. When it comes to mature games on the Switch, Fatal Frame Maiden of Blackwater offers up one of the most terrifying and unforgettable adventures on the console. Well, that does it for today's video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell to get notified about new videos which release every Monday and Thursday. You can follow me on all of the socials which are linked below to stay up to date, and also join my growing community on Discord to meet many like-minded gamers to continue the conversation with. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my Patreon supporters: Rhino, Skilljim, Shuden, Richard, Amy, Daniel, Paul, Dio, Omar, Strider, Pierre, Alex, Carl, Awesome Jacket Dude, GameCube Galaxy, and Paddy J for their continued support that helps make these videos possible. If you're interested in joining my Discord or supporting the channel through Patreon, you'll find all of these links down below. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch the video. I'll catch you next time.